Security guard laughed at Arnold's muscles, calling them fake. What happened next shocked the entire gym. The fluorescent lights of Peak Performance Gym hummed with a sterile efficiency, casting a harsh, unforgiving glow on the rows of gleaming chrome and black leather. The air, cool and dry, carried the faint, almost clinical scent of rubber and cleaning solution, a stark contrast to the raw, earthy smell of sweat and effort found in more traditional iron houses. It was late morning, and the gym was sparsely populated, mostly by casual exercisers and a few serious lifters lost in their own worlds. In a quiet corner, near the free weights, a figure of formidable build moved through a series of bicep curls. His muscles, though clearly aged, still rippled with an impressive density, each contraction a testament to a lifetime of dedication. He wore a simple, dark t-shirt that stretched taut across his powerful frame, and his face, etched with the wisdom of years, held an expression of focused intensity. The quiet concentration was abruptly broken by a loud, derisive laugh. "Look at this guy, try to relive his glory days." A burly security guard, clad in a crisp uniform that seemed a size too small for his inflated physique, stood leaning against a pillar, a smirk plastered across his face. He was a younger man, perhaps in his late 20s, with a thick neck and an air of self-importance. All those muscles, probably all fake anyway. Steroids and implants, am I right? He elbowed a passing gym member, who quickly averted his gaze and hurried away. The guard, whose name was Chad, then swaggered closer to the man, his eyes raking over his physique with an openly contemptuous sneer. "What's the matter, Grandpa? Can't lift like you used to? Maybe stick to the treadmills." The man, Arnold Schwarzenegger, slowly lowered the dumbbell he was holding, placing it gently on the rack. He turned, his gaze meeting Chad's, his expression unreadable. There was no anger, no immediate reaction, just a quiet, almost unsettling stillness. "I am merely training," Arnold stated, his voice deep and accented, devoid of any aggression. "Like everyone else here," Chad scoffed, rolling his eyes. "Training? More like pretending. I bet those arms are just pumped up with water. You old-timers always think you're still hot stuff, but we all know the truth." He then reached out, a brazen, disrespectful gesture, and poked Arnold's bicep with a finger. "See? Probably squishy underneath all that show." A few nearby gym-goers, who had been trying to ignore the scene, now openly stared, their faces a mix of shock and discomfort. The air grew thick with the cloying scent of Chad's cheap cologne, clashing with the honest smell of effort. Arnold's eyes, which had been calm, now held a flicker of something unreadable, a deep, almost ancient patience. He didn't flinch from Chad's poke, nor did he react with anger. He simply stood there, a towering, immovable presence. Chad, emboldened by the lack of reaction, laughed again, a harsh, grating sound. "What's the matter? Cat got your tongue? Or are you just too old to even argue?" He turned to the small cluster of onlookers. "See? Told you, all show, no go. Probably can't even lift half of what I can." He puffed out his chest, flexing his own biceps, which, while large, lacked the dense, sculpted quality of Arnold's. Tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Have you ever seen someone disrespect a legend like this? Chad had no idea the living legend he was mocking, nor the history of iron and sweat that defined the man before him. And if you're wondering what happens next, if this icon of strength will finally respond to such blatant disrespect, or if someone will intervene, make sure you're subscribed to the channel right now. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because you won't want to miss the shocking truth that's about to be revealed. A truth that will leave Chad absolutely speechless and the entire gym in awe. Chad continued to taunt, oblivious to the growing tension in the gym. "Maybe you should stick to acting, Grandpa. Leave the real lifting to the real men." He gestured dismissively at Arnold's weights. Arnold, however, remained silent, his gaze fixed on Chad. The quiet intensity in his eyes was almost unnerving. He slowly, deliberately, reached down and picked up a pair of dumbbells. Not the ones he had been using, but a significantly heavier pair from the rack. The metal clanged softly as he gripped them, his massive hands dwarfing the weights. He didn't speak, but the simple act of choosing those particular weights and the effortless way he held them sent a ripple of unease through Chad. The first subtle sign that Chad had made a grave miscalculation wasn't a word, but the sudden, almost reverent hush that fell over the gym. The casual chatter died down, replaced by a collective intake of breath. People who had been trying to ignore the scene now stared intently, their faces a mixture of disbelief and anticipation. A young woman on a nearby treadmill slowed her pace, her eyes wide. Chad, however, was too caught up in his own arrogance to notice the shift in atmosphere. "Oh, trying to impress me now, are we?" he sneered, though a flicker of uncertainty crossed his face as he eyed the heavy dumbbells. "Still probably fake." Arnold finally spoke, his voice low, a dangerous rumble that seemed to vibrate through the very floor. "You say my muscles are fake?" he asked, his eyes, which had been patient, now held a glint of steel. "You say I cannot lift like I used to?" He didn't wait for an answer. With a fluid, powerful motion, he began a set of bicep curls with the heavy dumbbells. Each rep was executed with perfect form, slow and controlled, the muscles in his arms bulging and contracting with undeniable, raw power. There was no straining, no grunting, just pure, focused strength. The sheer effortlessness of his movements with such heavy weights was a stark contrast to Chad's earlier bluster. The revelation of Arnold's true, enduring strength hit Chad like a physical blow. His jaw dropped, his eyes fixed on Arnold's flexing biceps, then on the weight of the dumbbells. The color drained from his face, leaving it a ghostly white. The murmurs from the crowd grew louder, a mix of gasps and hushed exclamations. "Holy cow," someone whispered, "he still got it." Chad's confident smirk evaporated, replaced by utter mortification. He tried to speak, but no words came out. Arnold, without a word, continued his set, each rep a silent, undeniable demonstration of his power. Arnold completed his set, lowering the dumbbells with a controlled, deliberate motion. The clang as they touched the rack echoed through the now silent gym. He turned to Chad, his gaze unwavering. "Are they still fake?" he asked, his voice calm, but with an edge that cut through the silence. Chad stammered, I mean... He was utterly speechless, his earlier bravado completely gone. Arnold then picked up an even heavier pair of dumbbells, weights that Chad himself would struggle to lift, and began another set, his movements just as precise, just as powerful. The gym-goers who had been holding their breath collectively exhaled. A few clapped softly, others openly cheered. Chad, meanwhile, looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. He glanced around, meeting the amused, sometimes pitying gazes of the other gym members. His crisp uniform suddenly seemed ill-fitting, his air of authority utterly shattered. He mumbled something inaudible, a desperate attempt to regain some dignity, but it was futile. The air, once thick with his arrogance, was now heavy with his shame. Arnold, meanwhile, continued his workout, seemingly oblivious to Chad's distress. His focus was absolute, his breathing deep and rhythmic. The clang of the dumbbells against the rack was the only sound that mattered. It was a powerful display of control, not just over the weights, but over the entire situation. He didn't need to shout, didn't need to argue. His presence, his identity, and his actions spoke volumes. Chad, unable to bear the weight of the stairs any longer, took a hesitant step back, then another. He looked at the weights Arnold was lifting, then at his own comparatively smaller physique, and a profound realization dawned on him. He wasn't just wrong. He was utterly outmatched, not just in strength, but in character. He mumbled a quick, almost inaudible apology, then turned and practically scurried away, disappearing into the back office. Arnold finally finished his last set, carefully racking the dumbbells. He wiped his brow with a towel, a faint smile playing on his lips. He looked around the gym, meeting the eyes of the other members, and gave a small, knowing nod. It was a moment of shared understanding, a silent acknowledgement of the absurdity that had just unfolded. A young man, who had been watching the entire exchange with wide eyes, approached Arnold cautiously. "Mr. Schwarzenegger," he began, his voice filled with awe. "That was incredible." "I can't believe he called your muscles fake," Arnold chuckled, a deep rumbling sound. "Some people," he said, his eyes twinkling, "they only believe what they see on the surface. They do not understand the work underneath." The main confrontation, though not a physical brawl, was a masterclass in psychological dominance. Arnold's calm demeanor, contrasted with Chad's escalating arrogance, highlighted his control. When Chad demanded he prove himself, Arnold didn't argue. He simply demonstrated, letting his actions speak louder than any words. His technique wasn't brute force, but the undeniable, raw power of his legendary physique. Chad's desperation grew with each passing second, his attempts to assert dominance crumbling under the weight of Arnold's unwavering strength. His initial provocations were met with polite confusion, then a quiet, almost amused patience. The crowd's reactions shifted from mild curiosity to outright shock, and then to a collective sense of satisfaction as Chad's entitlement backfired spectacularly. Arnold's control was evident in his continued focus on his workout, even as Chad ranted. He demonstrated that Chad's words held no power over him, that his purpose in the gym was far greater than the guard's petty insults. His superiority wasn't just physical. It was a superiority of character, of purpose, against Chad's chaos and self-importance. The climax of the confrontation wasn't a shouted argument, but the quiet, devastating demonstration of strength. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated truth that instantly shattered Chad's illusion of authority. The silence that followed was more impactful than any explosion, allowing the full weight of his error to sink in. Arnold then offered a small, almost philosophical observation to the young man who had approached him. "True strength," he said, flexing his biceps slightly, "is not just about how much you can lift. It is about discipline, about consistency, and about respecting the journey. And it is about knowing yourself, so you do not need to prove anything to others." The young man nodded, absorbing the wisdom. The complete defeat of Chad was absolute. He wasn't just asked to leave. He fled in self-imposed exile, his arrogance utterly shattered. The change in crowd perception was immediate and profound. The gym-goers, initially hesitant to get involved, now felt a renewed sense of camaraderie and respect for the legend in their midst. A small, elderly woman who had been diligently working on a stationary bike slowly pedaled over to Arnold. Her face, wrinkled with age, held a warm smile. "Some things," she said softly, her voice raspy, "you just don't question, and some people you just don't mess with." Arnold smiled back, a genuine, heartfelt expression. "Indeed," he replied. "Respect is earned, not demanded." Arnold then walked towards the exit, a towel slung over his shoulder, his presence still commanding but now radiating a sense of quiet satisfaction. He paused at the door, looking back at the bustling gym, the sounds of weights and efforts once again filling the air. He had defended his legacy, not with aggression, but with truth and dignity. As he stepped out into the bright afternoon sun, the moral of the story was clear. echoing in the minds of everyone who had witnessed the scene. Respect isn't taken by force. It's earned by dedication and humility. Silent doesn't mean powerless. Sometimes the quietest person carries the greatest power. A power that comes from knowing who you are and letting your actions speak for themselves.